So I had a chance to observe you during your word work lesson earlier this week, and as you reflect on the lesson, how do you think it went?
I think overall it went pretty well. Obviously, only one of my tutees was there, so that kind of changed things up a little bit because I did really want to focus on like the two of them interacting and like using each other, so that I wasn't able to see. But so taking that part out of it, I felt like it was still good practice for Mara in terms of using context clues and trying to find the meaning of unknown words. I think it's something that she definitely still struggles with and, is going to be something that needs to be practiced moving forward. But I think she definitely, is persistent and uses perseverance, and she doesn't want to, give up if she doesn't know the meaning, which I think is a good thing, but I also saw it as, not a negative thing, but she was, so focused on figuring out the prone. She, couldn't figure that one out. She was, so focused on that. So I kind of, I didn't want to give her the meaning, but, then as I was, working through it, I was like, okay, I can relate this to, we don't need to know every word, and even if we don't understand what that word means, if we still understand the whole rest of the passage, that's okay. So I thought, I kind of, changed it in the moment, but being able to, talk to her about that, it was, a good in-the-moment lesson for her, which she was, I want to know what it is, but I think it was it wound up being a good teaching opportunity.
Right, so you kind of reinforced to her that, the ultimate purpose is to understand the meaning of what we're reading, and so if we're able to achieve that, we, know enough of the words and their meaning to reach that goal.
Exactly.
And so you're saying that you think that she would still need more practice. In what way do you think you would provide?
I think just probably, more, moving forward, in her, independent reading book, having her just, kind of ask, when I'm conferencing with her, or she's, telling me what's happened, just checking in, oh, did you come across any unknown words? What did you do when that happened? Explain your thinking. So kind of just reinforcing it that way, because I think sometimes I've seen with them, we work on a skill, and then, they're only, focusing on that skill. So, we've worked on, stopping and thinking and reacting, and then, if I bring something else in, then that totally goes away. So just kind of trying to continue to bring up, were there any unknown words? What strategy did you use? That kind of thing.
Okay, so you're saying that you'll kind of reinforce it through authentic text and, while she's independently reading, tying it in that way.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. And so I was able to record the data that you had asked for, the timing of your modeling, as well as some of the questions that you asked during the guided and independent practice time. So if you want to take a look at that. So as you're reflecting on this data, what can you say about Mara's achievement of the objective?
So I think, based on my questioning, I feel like I wasn't, providing her, with too much support. I think I was, from what I can see, I was just, kind of restating a lot of the things that she was saying, and, trying then to further her thinking with that. So I think in terms of the questioning, I don't think I was, too direct or, leading her too much, and I definitely can see that I, modeled my thinking, I think, and, I'm thinking, I, trailed off, yeah, so I think in terms of that, I was pretty happy with how I like used the questioning. Again, it was hard because like I wanted to support her and I felt like she needed support, but I also would have wished she would have had a peer model to do that, because then I think that, not that she would have done better or worse, but I think it just would have been a different experience in that sense. But with the modeling being 7 minutes, I think that was like an appropriate amount of time. And I saw, like, I wanted to include them in, like, reviewing what context clues were, and, you know, she was able to, like, write one thing on the anchor chart, but as soon as I wrote, like, one other word, then she was like, oh, yeah, and, like, that sparked her idea. So I think that that was definitely a beneficial strategy, and probably, you know, had it been the two of them, maybe it would have even been more beneficial, but definitely, like, including them in creating that, like, review anchor chart. I think I would use that moving forward.
So you're saying engaging her in that modeling portion of the lesson helped her to, like kind of...
Yeah, I think just helped her to, you know, think about, you know, what context clues are, why we use them.
Okay, yeah. Like kind of the purpose behind today's lesson.
Yes, right, setting the purpose for the lesson and, you know, giving her something to look at if she was stuck, like, oh, what can I do? Because I've been encouraging them to use, like, the supports we have in the room for when they're stuck.
So is there anything you're noticing about the questions that you asked that makes you think or helps you to understand Mara's strengths and weaknesses, or in terms of her ability to think about her thinking during the lesson?
So, I think she's definitely quick to, like, just, like, pick a word and fill it in. And it's kind of like she just guesses what might make sense, and, like, if it sounds good, she's, like, happy to keep going. So I definitely think, like, even when she was figuring out the word enervated, she thought it meant scared, and it was kind of like she filled in the word scared and it made sense, like, within the sentence, but it really wasn't the meaning of the word. So I think, you know, that deeper thinking of being like, okay, this word, like, it does make sense when I, like, substitute it, but is, like, it, does it make sense within, like, the context of the few sentences that are around it is definitely something that she still wasn't quite grasping.
Okay, so, like, kind of reinforcing that, like, replacing this word with a possible meaning could work, but you have to also remember to read within the entire passage, or
read like, you know, the sentences before or after to make sure that, like, that's what's happening.
Right.
So that's definitely something that she still, I think we still would need to work on, because she is quick to just be like, oh, well, this, like, I think it means scared, and then just, like, plop that word right in there. And I think I saw that with prone too. Like, she wanted, like, a word to fit right in there, which is, like, a skill to use to see if things are making sense, but it's not, you can't always go to that skill.
Yeah, so I guess how could you help her to use that skill, but in a way that it's going to be helpful and not just, like you said, just putting any possible meaning in?
Right. I guess, I think, you know, when she does, like, if she is just, like, substituting a word and thinking that it makes sense, like, using our strategy of, like, going back to reread and thinking, like, okay, what is happening to the characters, or what are they doing, or how are they feeling, and, like, okay, does that word make sense based on what's going on with the characters in the story?
That makes sense, so like you said, rereading, making sure the context of the story matches the meaning.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it'll take her time to figure that out, but I think, you know, continuing to kind of go back to all of the strategies that we use, because we've talked about, like, good readers reread when something doesn't make sense, or they stop and summarize, so, like, just kind of building on all of those skills, and then to say, like, okay, does this word, you know, does that really make sense or not?
Okay. And so based on what you're noticing from the data, what are some insights that you might be discovering about your instruction?
I think just moving more towards, like, practicing the skill in an authentic way in their independent reading books, will benefit them. Also, I think having her, like we talked about, having her explain her thinking, like telling me all on her own, not saying like, I want you to find a word you don't know in this passage and figure it out, like just using a casual conversation to be like, what, were there any words you didn't know? Like, can you explain what you did? Or, explain if you didn't do anything, because that could,
So using those questions to kind of help her to have those metacognitive, like, times where she's thinking about her thinking, like, what was your thought process when you came across?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think, we have practiced that metacognition piece, and I think it's definitely a work in progress, but it's something that I noticed from their files that, like, and they've told me, like, we don't think, we just get it done. And I think she said that when you were in the room, too. Like, she just wants to get it done. So definitely focusing on that, like, explain your thinking. What did you do as a good reader? I think that'll just reinforce more for her using, like, the metacognitive strategies as she's reading independently.
And so for your future lessons, what do you think from this data and from this lesson do you think you're going to carry over into other tutoring sessions?
I think, continuing to use a lot of just, like, open-ended questions to, increase the student talk time, kind of just trailing off so she can kind of, they can be doing the thinking as much as possible, obviously. And then I think just, again, using it in, like, practicing the skill in an authentic way, and continuing to, like, circle back to it. So even if we're practicing a different skill, like, still try and pull this into the questioning when I conference with them.
Right, and so you're saying the open-ended questions and additional student talk time will help the girls to kind of...
I think just kind of, like, make it more a part of their, what they do when they read.
Yeah.
So using those metacognitive skills, and definitely just, like, okay, this is what good readers do. This is what I need to be doing when I'm reading.
Great.
All right. Thank you.